Well, having understood the background and division of T.S. Eliot's essay, The Function of Criticism, we shall go ahead with part one of this essay. This is the revision of his views presented in his famous essay, Tradition and Individual Talent, which was published in the year 1919. Here, T.S. Eliot says that it is commonly believed that criticism is an autotelic activity. Autotelic activity means it has its own independence. And criticism is about the critic's views. But T.S. Eliot thinks that it is quite a wrong statement. It's quite wrong to believe that criticism is an autotelic activity, because a creative work of art requires great efforts and hard work. So criticism cannot be autotelic, means creative art, because as he says, a creative work of art requires great efforts and hard work. And those who consider criticism as an autotelic activity, according to T.S. Eliot, should be criticized strictly. Okay, so in his view, criticism is not an autotelic activity, and he does not allow others to believe it. He criticizes such people who think that criticism is an autotelic activity. The reason is that any creative art requires great efforts and hard work. So he expresses certain opinions regarding critics and his creative work of art. So a creative work of art is just through its words. So this is his opinion. And a good text cannot be produced by having a particular aim in mind. As we write an essay, while writing an essay, we have a particular aim in mind. But according to T.S. Eliot, a creative work cannot be produced by having a particular aim in mind. So the writer does not write consciously, but he writes spontaneously. So here somewhere, remember again William Wordsworth. Spontaneously, not consciously. These are two different terms. Consciously means by being aware of something, and spontaneously means suddenly, without being conscious. And a critic should have one aim in mind. He talks about what? About the critics and his creative work of art. A critic should have one aim in mind. And what should be that aim? That is to make the text good to the taste for the readers. And this text should elucidate, means illustrate, explain with examples accordingly. Means a critical work should be interesting. It should go according to the interest of the readers. At the same time, it should come up with elucidation. To elucidate means to explain it with ample examples. And all the critics are humans. And different people can have different opinions and methods to respond to the literary text. Suppose you read a poem. There are around 22 students in this class. Okay. So if I give you a poem to read, being a human, you will come come up with different opinions. You will adopt different methods to understand, to read the text and analyze the text. Because critics are humans. All critics means whoever it is. And humans can have different opinions and methods to respond to the literary text, to a poem, to a story, to a work of fiction, to a play, etc. But the ultimate aim of every critic, although there can be differences of opinions, there can be different methods of interpreting the literary text, the ultimate aim of every critic should be to enlighten the mind of the reader through the text. Okay? When the critic interprets some literary work, there can be different opinions, there can be different methods, but the ultimate means the final, the last one of every critic should be what? To enlighten. To enlighten means to make the readers knowledgeable, to add to the knowledge of the readers through the text. And although there can be different opinions, there can be different methods to respond to the literary text, but the aim of every critic should be the same. What should it be? To enlighten the mind of the reader through the text, to try and compose differences with the other critics. They should come up with differences with the other critics. Of course, there can be disagreements, but that particular text, the critical text, should aim at adding to the knowledge of the readers. He should come up with different opinions. A critic should not be a blind follower of other critics. If some critics say like that, it is not necessary that the other critics should say the same. They should come up with different opinions, different ideas. A critic should not be a blind follower of other critics. Rather, a critic should be capable of explaining and justifying why should texts be preserved for future generation. In his individual tradition and individual talent, he talks about this. So the critic's duty is to preserve the text for future generation. So he should be capable of explaining and justifying why this particular text is important for future generation. In other words, we can say that a critic should be able to explain why a literary work or literary text should possess continued readership in future. This is applicable to songs as well. The Hindi song that you listen to, Marathi songs you listen to. So those songs should not come and go. They should not come and vanish. They should be preserved for future generation. And being a critic, I should have that capability to explain and justify the reason why these particular texts, literary texts, have those qualities of sustaining or qualities of possessing continued readership in future as well. So this is how T.S. Eliot explains what we call the role of a critic, and at the same time, his creative work of art. A work of art will become creative when his work of art, when he follows all these things. Okay, so it requires what? Hard work. It requires great efforts. And a critic should have a particular aim in his mind. The aim is to make the text good to the taste of the readers. The critic should be able to explain everything with appropriate examples. Okay, this is how we understand his opinions about the critic and his role. Okay, Eliot's views on critique and the critical work part is expressed in the first part, which was the part of his essay, tradition and individual talent.